Hey guys, here to provide an argument for a few of the rule change proposals for this upcoming season. So let's get started. First up, quarterback touchdown points being worth 5 points. I think quarterbacks earning a few more points is more representative of a good game compared with good games of other positions. For example, of all of the instances where players scored 20 or more fantasy points in our league, this happened for quarterbacks 163 times. For wide receivers, this happened 202 times. So wide receivers are scoring more. When you take a look at our roster, we have two quarterbacks, obviously. We have two receivers, but also with two flex spots, this is four opportunities for wide receivers to get 20-point games, which already happen more often. So, and this doesn't even include tight ends, by the way. Tight ends, if you include tight ends, this number goes up to 249. So on our roster, you have five opportunities to score 20-point games, and they happen way more often for these catching positions more than the throwing positions. And just with the NFL being such a pass heavy league, I mean, that's what the sport is. It's the quarterbacks are the stars. I would like to see a few more points for good games on quarterbacks. And this point is kind of further exemplified. I'm trying to remember how to erase my screen. I cannot remember. So Control Z. This point, I think, is further exemplified by the high ceilings for wide receivers and relatively low ceilings for quarterbacks. So what you're looking at are the two best receiving games last season and the two best passing games last season. And so Ja'Marr Chase in this show-stopping performance put up 52.2 points. Amari Cooper, 265 yards, two touchdowns, 51.5. Lamar Jackson, five passing touchdowns. This happened once this year. He did rush for 35 yards in this game, but if you subtract those 3.5 points, these passing stats come to 32.8. And then when you look at this monster of a game by Justin Herbert, look at this performance. Oh my gosh. This comes down to 28.20. So I just think that's a little bit too big of a discrepancy between quarterbacks and wide receivers. There's different ways we can go about this, but for now, the proposal is just more pass touchdowns, so we'll stick with that. But am open to other ideas for how we can kind of close this gap if you feel the need that, like I do. All right. Next up, adding team defense back to our rosters. This is just a preference. I miss things like total points allowed and special teams touchdowns, although rare, they're still fun. I was wondering how strong of a connection there was between individual players' performances and their team defensive performances. Oops. So last year, Khalil Mack had one incredible game of 77 points. You can see his stats right there. But in the game that he played in, this was the final score of the game, 24-17, and the Chargers team defense, based on standard scoring, was still a good score, but 14 points is good, not great. Comparatively, the highest scoring team defense in that week last year was the Seahawks, who scored 30 points. And just kind of seeing this box score, having one team totally shut down another, 11 sacks, they scored a touchdown, and it happened to be Devin Weatherspoon who had the touchdown in this game. I think I just miss this type of performance is all. Maybe you get lucky and you got the exact players that you hit, but we only have three defensive players on our roster. 11 aside on an actual defense that are capable of actually coming up with these plays. Just kind of a personal preference and maybe a soft sell to get team defenses back on our roster. I care a little bit more strongly about free agency closing, pushing this back to week 18. Currently, our free agency closes at the kickoff of week 17, meaning the last chance you have to add a player is based on their performance after week 16. But everything is on the line in week 17. In our fantasy league, we're playing for championships. In the NFL, teams are playing for playoff spots, seeding. It's a critical time of the year. And I think if we see a player that we like that came through with it all on the line, we should be able to add those players to our rosters. Here's a look at some of the highest scoring players in week 17 of last year that were free agents. Defensive, DL linebacker, 39 points. Obviously, some of the defensive guys are scoring. But if you go back to wide receivers, you got guys that are scoring 20 points. And personally, I think if I wanted to add them in, I shouldn't have to wait until the next offseason. I would like to see that opportunity and plus there's one more week in the season anyway. So I think it just makes a little bit more sense to have that availability for one more week of the season. That way you're saving your rookie draft picks for rookies, which I think we all would kind of like to do rather than veterans. Plus, it's just an extra week to kind of set your roster for the offseason. And I think that might be nice. For scheduling, I'm proposing that I build the schedule. And the main reason I wanted to do this is I wanted to get rid of this repeating format where whoever you play in week 1, you play again in week 8. And we're looking at Vegas' schedule here. He played these teams in weeks 1 through 5, and it's the exact same order in the second half of the season. And that just drives me crazy. I can't stand the predictability of that. I would love there to be more randomness. I would love a scenario to be possible where whoever you're playing in week 6, you might play again in week 8, first half of the season, second half of the season. On the other side of the coin, maybe you play somebody in week 1 and then not again until week 13. I just think that's a more natural way to build a schedule. And that's really all I wanted to do with that one. I talked about week 7, which is the one week that you only play one competitor. And I could build this any number of ways, but I'm proposing just building it on strength of schedule, which is what the NFL actually does anyway. And I'm even toying with the idea of doing a live stream, and you can watch me do a schedule reveal on Twitch. Probably not going to happen, but hey, I'll do it if you want me to. All right, last proposal, reintroducing the standard league every 4 years. This started with a desire to own some of the superstars if you don't have them. Because, I mean, when you look at these top quarterbacks, these are the top scoring positions over the last 2 years combined, especially the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. I mean, if you own these guys, there is basically a 0% chance that you're going to trade them over the next 5 or 6 years. And, that's all great for the Dynasty League. Just might be nice every 4 years for you to have an opportunity to own a Josh Allen, a Tyreek Hill. This doesn't even include Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, who have had injury problems, but their points per game are certainly top 3 level. So, I think it'd be fun to reset the player pool, think short term instead of long term for one season. Everyone is fair game. And if you agree with me, go with the vote, but it's up to y'all. I think the cost on this, we'd have to discuss at a later date. For right now, I'm thinking if we do $50 for a Dynasty League, maybe this is only $25, but we'll talk about that later. All right, that is it for my arguments on these proposals. I'll see everybody in a couple of weeks, and I'm sure I'll put a vote. I'll put like a poll in the league chat so we can get this vote out in a couple of days. All right, see ya.